Coming up on This Week in Hockey East, we're going to give you a full BEANPOT preview of the final. BU and Northeastern coming up on Tuesday, plus a ton of action, all of it on television with Nesson. This should be so much fun. This Week in Hockey East starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Hockey East. And as we get deeper into January, the storylines are certainly picking up. We have a lot of games to talk about this week, a bunch of televised games this week, so it should be a lot of fun. And it's going to start with a two-off on television over the weekend in this series between UConn and New Hampshire. Tyler, you'll be there for those games as New Hampshire trying to bounce back from that tough game at BU against a UConn team that's sneaky hot here of late.
Yeah, they sure are. They're 4-2-1 in their last 7 games. It's a Friday night, Sunday afternoon matchup. Friday night in Stores, Sunday afternoon in Durham, both games on Nesson. But yeah, UConn's turned things around a little bit. They're coming off an impressive shutout win over Maine last Saturday. Let's talk goaltending real quick. Arseny Sergev was in goal for that shutout, but it was his first start since November 10th. That was a rough outing for him. And after that, it looked like Ethan Hyder had taken over the job. He did very well. But they give Sergev a shot, and wow, did he make the most of it, being able to knock off one of the hottest teams in the country. Well, Maine still hasn't lost at home, but they take that loss on the road. Now, offensively for UConn, they're also finding their footing, averaging 2.7 goals a game. If that keeps up, it'd be the first time in 5 years they're under 3 goals per contest, but they're trending in the right direction. The interesting thing for me is they don't have a single scorer in the top 30 in points in Hockey East, so it is kind of an all-hands-on-deck thing. They had Matthew Wood last Friday, a 2-assist game against Maine in a losing effort. He's getting back into a rhythm after World Juniors. And we always talk about UMass Lowell in this context. Winning when you don't score more than 2 goals. Lowell is still the king at this. They've done it 4 times, but UConn's right there. They've got 3 wins when scoring 2 goals or fewer. They're tied with Providence and UMass in that department, but they can grind you out if the offense isn't clicking as much as they like it to. Now, UNH, they did a nice job taking care of non-conference business with wins in 4 out of 5 games heading into last week against BU, but you know the Terriers are looking for some revenge after the upset loss back in October. They win that 3-0. But not your typical wire-to-wire shutout. That was a scoreless game over halfway through the third period. I mean, UNH fans had to feel great about how tight that was at Agganis Arena. And Matthew Caron, he had, well, technically, if you look at the deep analytics, one of his best games ever. UNH generated enough chances where Caron's expected goals allowed rate was about 2.5. He didn't give up anything. So that's one of his best starts as a collegiate goaltender. If there's an area of opportunity for UNH, it's on the power play. They had a full 2 minutes of a 5-on-3 toward the end of the first period. They can't convert. And the end of a 5-minute major was wiped out because of a roughing penalty. So they wind up going 0 for 6 on the power play in that game. And if you break it down, Hockey East power play numbers for UNH against non-conference. Out of conference, they're at 29%. But in Hockey East play, they're 5 for 30. That's 17%. So there's a great 5-on-4 group in there somewhere. Ryan Conmey, Nick Caffarelli, each 3 power play goals, but just a matter of unlocking it in conference play. So watch that matchup. Their power play against the PK of UConn, which was slumping a bit, one of those ruts where you can't point to one thing. It's puck luck. It's clearance issues. You get the puck up, but not out. And they gave Maine just 1 power play chance on Saturday, and that's a great way to solve the problem. They killed the 1 penalty they committed against a really good Maine power play unit. So you always hear it, stay out of the box. You give yourself a good chance against a UNH power play that you can bet is going to be chomping at the bit to make an impact in that weekend series.
Well, that'll be Friday. Also on Friday, over on Nesson Plus, we're going to have Providence going on the road to take on Holy Cross on the women's side. And it felt like last weekend for Providence was finally that weekend that we've been waiting for them to break out, especially on the offensive end. 2 wins, 4-3 in overtime, and 6-0. So they really come to life on offense. And even though they didn't score a ton of power play goals, it's still worth noting a power play goal in each game for Providence. The Friars had just 2 power play goals previously on the whole season. So coming back from Belfast, it feels like, is that a moment that they can take a jump? They're still right in it for a potential home game in the Hockey East quarterfinals, depending on what happens the rest of the way. They're still a few points behind the top 4 right now, which we'll talk about later, but they're still kind of right there if they can pick up some wins. And they'll try to do that against a Holy Cross team that has had some really nice results this year. Went on the road to Conti Forum, got a shootout win. They have a win over Northeastern, but they have struggled to put the puck in the back of the net here recently. just 1 goal in their 3 games since returning for second semester. But Holy Cross has been very stout defensively all year long for the most part. So pretty good matchup on Friday with Providence taking on Holy Cross. As we talked about, it's just a full slate of games this weekend for a lot of teams, and there's more women's hockey coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, let's keep it in that league. You got Vermont going to Walter Brown Arena for 2 games against BU. Friday at 6 on ESPN Plus, Saturday at 3 on NESN Plus. And we'll see. This could be where Vermont starts to turn things around. Of course, they haven't been able to match their performance from the last 2 seasons. Each of those years ended with 22 wins and a second-place finish behind only Northeastern in the standings. But this is a classic case of everything still in front of the Catamounts. They've got 12 games left, and half of them are against the top 3 teams in the standings, BC, UConn, and Northeastern. So a couple ways to look at it. It's going to be a grind down the stretch, but if you can pick up plenty of points, you're moving your way up. You talked about that home ice advantage and how important that can be. And for Vermont, the power play had really been struggling. The entire offense was in a bit of a slump. They had 2 goals over their previous 3 games before a breakout effort against Providence in their last outing. It was an overtime loss, but they get 5 power play chances. They score 3 times. So look for Vermont to try to keep that momentum going on the road in Boston. And Eric, you're going to talk about BU and the BEANPOT in a bit, but you just saw how much that first round win meant to them to take down BC. And they're only human. It can be so tough to quickly turn the page and be ready for a hungry Vermont team coming in twice before they go to the Garden for that historic BEANPOT championship game. So it's interesting to see where the mentality will be, but I think you just look at what Tara Watchorn did. She just flew back from Sweden the day before the BEANPOT, coaching Canada's under-18 national team in Women's World. So she knows how to focus on one task at a time, and they have a tough one with the Catamounts in town for 2.
And yeah, she's not missing that BEANPOT tournament for anything. Busy weekend for BU. You got BEANPOT. We'll come up and we'll talk about the games at the Garden on the other side. And then maybe most exciting, we have this Sunday doubleheader coming up on NESN of Hockey East. You talked already about UNH and UConn. That'll be the second game following BC and Merrimack on Sunday. They'll also play Friday night at Lawler Arena, these 2 teams. Merrimack is starting to be the Merrimack that we saw last year, with so many of these guys returning from last year's Hockey East championship runner-up finish in an NCAA tournament. They've won 4 of 5 in second semester, including their split over UMass last weekend, including a big win on Saturday after a 1-goal loss. For Merrimack this year, of their 10 losses, 7 of them have been either by a goal or less, or a goal plus an empty netter or less. So they've been in a lot of these games. They're finally starting to get healthy a little bit here. And sometimes you just need stars to be stars. And that's what's happening recently here for Merrimack. Alex Jeffries has goals in 3 straight games. Matt Capone has goals in 3 straight games. Ben Brar has points in 4 straight games. Those are the guys that Merrimack relied on last year. 3 of their returning scorers from last year. They're finally starting to, and it's not that any of those guys had poor performances early. You know, Capone's a good example. He had a ton of assists. He's still in the top 10 in Hockey East in assists, but now the puck's finding the back of the net, which is what they need from him a little bit as well. Jeffries, who missed some time earlier this year. Chase Stevenson is back, the UNH grad transfer who missed a lot of time. He's back. And Merrimack, who had not been great on faceoffs for the most part this year, was really good at the Mullins Center on Friday, maybe most impressively against a UMass team that's always been stout at the faceoff dot. So we'll see if Merrimack can keep this rolling. Obviously a tough task with Boston College this weekend, down to number 2 in the pairwise in the national poll after splitting with Providence. I think we're going to see BC and BU bounce back and forth quite a bit over the next month, 2 months or so. You know, for BC, a couple things that stand out from that Providence series. Obviously, the fact that they had that big win on Friday, 7-1, they really took advantage of the opportunities, and that's the mark of a great team. I think that Nate Lehman would tell you it was not Providence's best period in the second, so maybe there were 5 opportunities, but BC took advantage of all 5, and that's the mark of really good offense. Oscar Jelvik was a big part of that. We've talked about this, but it's still amazing to note he has 11 goals now in 19 games this year on 46 shots. Last year, in his freshman year, 4 goals on 65 shots in 34 games. So the turnaround has been remarkable. He's really added strength in the offseason. Greg Brown's talked about how he's won some of those board battles to get around some defenders and put himself in position. He's been a huge piece. And just finally on BC, because it's worth noting, we talked so much about Macklin Celebrini. It's deserved. But going into Friday, the man with the most points in Hockey East is Gabe Perreault, who passed Macklin Celebrini. He has 1 point more. Now Celebrini has more points per game, but Perreault now is your Hockey East leader. And it's worth noting, pretty amazing, Tyler, the 5 leaders in points in Hockey East are all freshmen.
And that's been a story all year. Look at how good the young talent in this conference is. But yeah, just to hear that it's all freshmen, that's equally as unsurprising as it is impressive, but a great nugget. And you're going to have BC going back to North Andover for the first time since that unbelievable double overtime quarterfinal game, right. 1-0 Merrimack. That was a real signature game in that crazy season. So they'll have revenge on their minds with some reinforcements, to say the least, with that great freshman class. All right, it's time to take some short shifts presented by the Shift Group, helping elite athletes and veterans become elite sales professionals. Erica, we've been waiting for the BEANPOT breakdown. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on what should be a classic championship game on Tuesday.
Yeah, I know this is a Friday show, but we're not missing the opportunity to talk about Tuesday at TD Garden for the first time. And we now know it'll be BU and Northeastern in the final. What a game yesterday. BU beats BC in a shootout 3-3. It officially goes down as a tie, and then the shootout with the new rules, we'll save that for another day. But BU was out in front of that game the whole way, and I think that's really the big takeaway for BU. They were up 1-0, they were up 2-1, they were up 3-2. Credit to BC for coming back each time, including scoring with under 2 minutes to go to send that game to overtime. Lily Welke with just a ridiculously good move in the shootout, which ends up being the only goal of the shootout to give BU the win. And Callie Shanahan was excellent. 27 saves plus 3 in the shootout. Overtime was back and forth. It was up and down in the 3-on-3. It was everything you want. And they'll take on a Northeastern team that, even though they dropped a couple of games up at Maine, didn't get the full result last week, they still have been playing well here recently. Now, they're not necessarily scoring at the rate that you might want, but how about this for a number? They've only allowed 5 goals in their last 6 games total. And they have not allowed more than 2 goals in a game since November 21st. So it is incredibly difficult to score against Northeastern. Of course, the big reason why is their goaltender. And if you look at Gwyneth Phillips, in now 4 career games in the BEANPOT, 0.50 goals against and a .974 save percentage. She won the Britannia Award last year as the best goaltender in the tournament. She's on her way after a 9-save shutout. Northeastern outshot Harvard 40-9, but only win 1-0 on Taze Thompson's goal, the former Harvard Crimson player, winning that game at Harvard. So a lot of storylines there in terms of the defense in this game. Shanahan was really good. Phillips is really good. How often have we seen a BEANPOT winner get carried by a good goaltender? I think that's going to be the story on Tuesday. And it's worth noting both the third place game and the final will be televised on NESN from TD Garden this year. So BC and Harvard will play at 5 o'clock, and then the final at 8, Northeastern and BU. It's going to be so special to see all the women's tournament get its stage at TD Garden, and we'll see who comes out on top of a BEANPOT victory. It's going to be really exciting to see it there for the first time.
We're so spoiled this year. Feels like BEANPOT Christmas is coming early. Can't wait to watch that great match. Both incredible games in the semifinals this week as well. My short shift, I only have one this week, but I'm talking about 2 different series. 2 teams from Massachusetts going up north for a weekend showdown. BU at Vermont, UMass Lowell at Maine. Vermont has 4 straight home games coming up. It's tied for the longest home stretch of the season. And the Catamounts are 5-3 at Gutterson Fieldhouse this year. And calling this a trap game or a trap series for BU, I think that's disrespectful to how good Vermont is. So I'm just going to lay out BU's upcoming schedule after they go to Burlington. They're right back to Boston for that anticipated home and home with BC. Then they're on national TV against Northeastern the following Tuesday on ESPNU. Then the next Monday, it's the BEANPOT against Boston College. So I don't think they will, but if they do overlook Vermont for even a shift or 2, Steve Weidler's team can make you pay. But there's certainly a lot to look forward to for BU. So as important as ever to not take any nights off. Now, Maine, they're welcoming in UMass Lowell. They still haven't lost a home game all season. Just 2 ties, BC, who won in a shootout, and then Colgate. UMass Lowell, is the offense back? They've scored 10 goals across 2 games last weekend in Tempe, Arizona. We're going to find out if they're fully back. The Riverhawks, they went to Alphond last year and had a classic 2-1 Lowell win. But we'll see for the first time how those Nadeau brothers do as they try to navigate through that mucky neutral zone that Norm Bazin likes to set up. That should be a really intriguing matchup because when everything seems to be going well, sometimes you throw the Riverhawks into the mix and they can mess things up a little bit for a hot team like Maine. So we'll see how they can handle it up in Orono this weekend.
And, I'm just going to go 2 quick short shifts. We're going to talk a lot more about it next week with BC and BU, and both of those games will be on NESN. But it's just worth kind of resetting for a second. This has never happened. As good as BC and BU have been in the history of their 2 programs, they've never been 1 and 2 in the poll at the same time in the season. They're both 1 and 2 in the national poll and 1 and 2 in the pairwise. That's never happened in the regular season before. And they're going to play 3 times in 2.5 weeks coming up, including in the BEANPOT first round. It's going to be unbelievable. This is unprecedented, let alone to go with all the other HUSKIES teams that are inside the cut line right now. So enjoy this while it's happening, because it has, again, it's never, as good as these teams have been, it's never happened before this way. And then just finally, we talked a lot about the Northeastern women. Let's give some credit. Last week, we talked about UNH. Could they prove that they were a top 4 team in a weekend against BU and BC? Well, they got 5 of 6 points last weekend. They're now firmly in that top 4, and they will take on the team 1 point ahead of them on Friday, Northeastern. Northeastern obviously has BEANPOT to deal with this week, but just a massive game. UNH against Northeastern. Can UNH continue to take that jump that they've been on this year and kind of secure themselves in the top 4? They're going to play 3 times over the next month. This is the first. So that is a really exciting matchup to watch on Friday night, outside of all the other things that we've talked about. Should be a great week. We're not in the home stretch yet, but, Jerry York used to say this is trophy season when BEANPOT turns up. It's earlier now with the women's BEANPOT sliding up. You got World Juniors too, so it's always trophy season here at This Week in Hockey East. Thanks so much for joining us.